My name is Isabella. I am 35 years old and a nurse in the vibrant, chaotic, and overcrowded city of São Paulo, Brazil. My life was a whirlwind of double shifts, hospital bureaucracy, and the chronic exhaustion of someone trying to keep humanity afloat in a system that seems designed to drown it. I saw death every day, but I never thought I would see it from the inside. I was a skeptical health professional, used to explaining death with ECG charts and pressure peaks. Spirituality was for me the necessary comfort for families, but not a tangible reality. That day, October 12th, was like any other. The ICU shift was particularly heavy. I was running from one side to the other, monitoring patients with severe respiratory failure. Around 11:45 p.m., I felt a sharp pang in my chest. Initially, I ignored it. Stress, just stress, I thought. But the pain was not like the acidic burn of indigestion or muscle tension. It was a cold claw, squeezing my heart, cutting off my breath. I fell to my knees beside the nursing station, a patient's monitor blinking indifferently above my head. Before I could scream for help, the pain exploded into a total silence, and the cold, white linoleum floor rushed up to meet me. The last thing I heard was the unmistakable, deafening sound of a cardiac arrest monitor alarm. But it wasn't the patient's. It was mine. The out-of-body experience, OBI, the physics of the soul. The moment my body hit the floor, the pain, the sound, the exhaustion, everything ceased. It was replaced by a clarity so absolute, so serene, that it defies all human language. I wasn't scared. I was free. I found myself floating, hovering about 10 feet above the scene. Below, I saw my colleagues, Dr. Ricardo, the head resident, Nurse Anna, and 2 assistants, rushing towards my inert body. The scene was surreal. I saw Isabella, the tired nurse, lying on the floor, pale and lifeless. I saw them initiating CPR, the rhythmic compressions, the frantic preparation of the defibrillator. This was not me. The me that was floating was pure awareness, pure light, and pure observation. My consciousness was so amplified that I could hear the silent thoughts of the team. My God, it's Isabella. She's too young. We're losing her. VFib. Charge to 200. The metallic, sterile reality of the hospital room seemed dull, muted, and utterly irrelevant compared to the vibrant, expansive reality I now inhabited. I looked down one last time at the frantic attempts to revive my physical vessel. It was an act of profound compassion, but from my new perspective, it seemed almost comical. Why struggle so much for that cumbersome, painful, and limited machine? I was already alive. The tunnel and the pull of the unseen. A strong, gentle, and utterly irresistible current began to pull me away. It wasn't a dark tunnel, as some describe, but a vortex of pure, accelerating light. It felt like being drawn through a billion stars simultaneously, a cascade of golden, liquid energy. The speed was beyond comprehension, but there was no vertigo, only peace. This peace wasn't the absence of conflict. It was the presence of resolution. It was the answer to every question, the balm for every wound, the end of all striving. As I traveled, the sounds of Earth, the monitors, the voices, the sirens, faded into a distant, muffled echo. I began to hear a sound that was less heard and more felt, a massive, harmonic choir of existence. It was the sound of creation itself, a vibration of unconditional love. Reflect with me. If you knew, right now, that all your suffering would end in this absolute divine peace, would you still cling so fiercely to the chaos of your current life, or would you seek this peace while still here? I didn't think about my family, my debts, or my unfinished work. All those things, which consumed 99% of my earthly time, vanished in the face of this eternal reality. The journey was accelerating towards an incandescent source, a light that was not blinding, but illuminating. Capítulo 2, the encounter beyond time, the radiant presence and the life review. The velocity ceased as abruptly as it began. I didn't arrive at a place. I arrived within a reality. The transition from the tunnel to this space was like waking from a dream into true life. The light enveloping me was pure love. It was a love that was a force field, a substance, and the very air I breathed. This place, I hesitate to call it heaven, as it transcended any religious concept. was a field of pure consciousness. The colors were beyond the visible spectrum of Earth. The silence was pregnant with meaning. I was enveloped in an ocean of joy that made every happy moment of my earthly life seem like a flickering candle next to a supernova. The central figure, the presence of all-knowing love. Then, he was there. Not approaching, not descending, but simply present. I saw Jesus. He was not the pale, long-haired figure depicted in Sunday school paintings. He was a being of overwhelming radiance, light condensed into a form that was perfectly familiar and yet infinitely majestic. His eyes, and this is what imprinted itself on my soul, were pools of unconditional knowledge and infinite tenderness. They saw every corner of my being, every dark thought, every petty judgment, every secret shame, and they saw them not with condemnation, but with profound compassion. He didn't speak with audible words, but with a transmission of thought and feeling that bypassed the clumsy mechanism of language. "Welcome, my daughter. You are home." The sensation of standing before this presence was not one of being judged, but of finally seeing myself through the eyes of perfect love. And it was excruciating. The life review, the empathic judgment. Then came the phenomenon common to almost all NDEs, but for me, it was amplified by the immediacy of his presence. The life review. It was not a judgment by him, but a judgment with him, an empathic, instantaneous replay of my entire existence. The events of my life unfolded in a 360-degree holographic sphere surrounding me, not sequentially, but simultaneously. Every moment was accessible, but the focus was not on what I did, but on the emotional residue of my actions on others. I saw the time I snapped impatiently at a tired mother in the emergency room. In the review, I became that mother. I felt her exhaustion, the searing guilt she carried for not being a good enough parent, and the crushing weight of my callous words. My own heart shattered, not because of what I did, but because I was feeling the true impact of my indifference. I relived every time I ignored a homeless person on the streets of São Paulo, not just seeing their face, but feeling the cold, the hunger, the profound loneliness of being invisible to the world. The greatest lesson of the review was this: we are not judged by our successes or failures, our wealth or our status, but solely by the quantity and quality of the love we have given and received. Every opportunity to act with compassion was highlighted in brilliant gold. Every missed opportunity was a stark, painful emptiness. I saw moments of pure love, too. The care I gave to my patients, the comfort I offered a dying man, the small, unnoticed acts of kindness. In those moments, the light intensified, and I felt a surge of shared joy with Jesus. I understood then, indifference is the real darkness. It is the refusal to acknowledge the divinity in the other, and it is the only true sin. I had been so busy surviving, so focused on the mechanics of life, that I had become blind to the sacred interconnectedness of all things. Think about the last 24 hours of your life. How many of your actions were driven by love? How many were driven by indifference, fear, or self-interest? Your answer is a measure of your true spiritual progress. Chapter 3. The Creator's Tears. Jesus crying and the vision of imminent darkness. The review ended. I stood, humbled, naked of ego, before the presence. I was ready for whatever came next. A new assignment, eternal rest, or perhaps a gentle push back to the chaos. But what happened next was the most devastating and urgent part of my entire experience. The light around the figure of Jesus began to diminish, not because his power was receding, but because a massive, palpable sorrow was emanating from him, eclipsing the infinite joy. His face, until then a mask of perfect serenity and love, crumpled. Jesus was weeping. The sound of his sorrow was not a human sob. It was a cosmic, heartbreaking lament. It was the sound of a parent watching their beloved children deliberately choosing a path of self-destruction. And as he wept, the words were transmitted to me, not in a gentle whisper, but as a thundering imperative that shook my very soul. Isabella, look, the darkness is already here. Humanity is blind. The purpose of the crying, the pain of self-inflicted blindness. I was instantly transported from the field of love to a place of vision. I saw the earth, small and fragile, spinning in the vast emptiness. But it was not beautiful. It was enveloped in a suffocating gray mist, the darkness he spoke of. This mist was not supernatural evil. It was the accumulated consciousness of indifference, fear, greed, and division generated by billions of human hearts. The tears of Jesus were not tears of judgment, but tears of frustration and agonizing compassion. He was not crying because he was planning a punishment. He was crying because the human species, armed with unprecedented knowledge and technology, was systematically and willingly dismantling the only thing that could save it: love and unity. They have been given the tools, the prophets, the examples. His thought voice resonated. Yet they choose to use the light I gifted them, the light of reason, of creativity, of free will, to build prisons for their own souls. They chase shadows of power and possession, while the true power, the love that sustains the cosmos, is abandoned. The blindness he spoke of was the spiritual myopia. Humanity was obsessed with the visible, the measurable, and the temporary. We were experts on our phones, our finances, and our political divisions, but utterly ignorant of the eternal essence that connected us. We see the price of everything, but the value of nothing. We prioritize profit over people. We defend dogma over divinity. This blindness was the darkness itself. It manifested as the refusal to acknowledge the suffering of our neighbor, the destruction of our common home, Earth, and the enslavement to systems that profit from our exhaustion and fragmentation. I ask you now, what are you clinging to that is blinding you? Is it your anger, your consumer habits, your fear of change? Understand that these are the threads of the darkness he wept over, the prophecy of urgency, the immediacy of the threat. He showed me the timeline. It was not a distant future. The darkness was already woven into the fabric of the present moment. It wasn't coming. It had arrived. The urgency was terrifying. The opportunity to reverse the course, to awaken from the collective hypnosis, was closing rapidly. The system of planetary interconnectedness, ecological, economic, and social, was reaching a critical mass, a tipping point where the self-inflicted damage would become irreversible within a generation. The true disaster wasn't the external collapse, it was the internal one, the death of hope and the normalization of cruelty. Jesus was weeping because the children were losing their capacity for wonder and compassion, trading their souls for transient comfort and digital distractions. Chapter 4. The Great Vortex of Blindness, the Vision of Global Crisis and Urgency. The vision expanded, becoming a terrifying panoramic view of the world's afflictions, not just the symptoms, but the spiritual roots of the crises. This was the core of the prophecy I was to bring back. The mosaic of shadows, the manifestation of darkness. I was granted a view of the earth, saturated with the gray mist of indifference. I saw how this spiritual blindness manifested in 3 colossal, interconnected crises. 1. The collapse of relationship, the social fissure. I saw humanity divided into countless, ever-shrinking tribes, each fiercely defending its small patch of truth. The common ground had dissolved. The light showed me that the only purpose of our diversity was unity through love, yet we were using our differences as weapons. I saw politicians and media systems thriving on the energy of fear and polarization, deliberately tearing the social fabric for power. The greatest tragedy was the silence of good people, paralyzed by fear of social ostracism or the digital mob. The darkness was the sound of people talking at each other, but never to each other. 2. The ecological suicide, the loss of sacredness. Jesus showed me the forests burning, the oceans choking on plastic, the species vanishing. The spiritual root was the complete desacralization of the earth. We had reduced the planet, a magnificent living organism, to a mere resource for exploitation, a vast inventory of commodities. The blindness was our inability to see the divine spark in a tree, a river, or an animal. The vision was of a world committing suicide, not out of malice, but out of a lethal ignorance, a belief that we could destroy our foundation and still stand tall. 3. The tyranny of the immediate, the loss of eternity. I saw the endless cycle of work, consumption, and debt, a system designed to keep the human spirit perpetually distracted and exhausted. We were running on a treadmill of acquisition, confusing having with being. The vision showed our screens and devices not as tools, but as digital cages, keeping our attention perpetually outside ourselves, preventing the necessary introspection and the return to the heart. The urgent warning was, the world is being lost, one distracted soul at a time. The domino effect, the crisis as a forced awakening. The vision made it clear, these problems are not isolated. They are a single monolithic crisis born from the same source, the severing of the human connection to the divine, love, and the severance of our connection to one another, unity. The prophecy was that the crisis is actually a divine intervention through implosion. The external collapses, economic instability, climate disasters, widespread social unrest, are designed to shock humanity out of its comfortable, self-imposed blindness. The systems we rely on, food, energy, money, are becoming unstable precisely so that we are forced to look up, to drop the distractions, and to remember what truly matters: connection, community, and soul. They must be stripped of their false security to find the true security within me, the presence conveyed. The collapse is not a curse, but a desperate call for realignment. The severity of the darkness is proportional to the depth of the love that is being rejected. The contrast, the small, growing network of light, but amidst the overwhelming gray mist, I saw something else, a phenomenon that was the only source of hope. Across the planet, like tiny, determined sparks in the deep night, I saw a network of lights. These were individuals, groups, and communities that were already awake. They were the ones prioritizing service over self, truth over comfort, and love over fear. They were often marginalized, mocked, or simply invisible to the mainstream, but their spiritual frequency was so high that it cut through the mist. They were the people planting trees, feeding the poor, teaching compassion, creating true art, and most importantly, doing the hard inner work of self-purification and self-love. The vision made it clear. The battle is not between good and evil. It is between awareness and blindness. The mission, which I intuitively knew was now mine, was to ignite more of these sparks. The strength of the darkness is in its mass. The power of the light is in its intensity and purity. Do you realize that your own internal peace, your decision to respond to hostility with kindness, is an act of global resistance against the darkness? Your transformation is not just personal. It is a planetary necessity. Chapter 5. The Mandate and the Return. Isabella's Mission and the Forced Return to the Body. The vision faded, leaving me trembling with the weight of the cosmic sorrow and the terrible urgency. I turned to Jesus, no longer wanting to return, desperately pleading to remain in the presence of that overwhelming love. The final instruction: the light must be carried. The presence was now stern, yet infinitely loving. Isabella, you have seen the pain. You have felt the urgency. Your review is complete, but your task is not. The final instruction was a mandate of urgency. 1. Speak the truth of the tears. Tell them what you saw. Tell them I weep not for my power, but for their self-destruction. The message must be delivered with the urgency of a fire alarm, not the comfort of a lullaby. 2. Focus on the core. The solution is not complex. It is always love in action. Do not preach dogma. Demonstrate compassion. Do not debate the external world. Lead them to the internal work. 3. Be the bridge. Use your profession, your life, your every interaction to be a bridge between this reality and the illusion they inhabit. Remind them that they are light, currently disguised as fear. The time for subtle hints and long-term planning is over, he conveyed, with a force that resonated deep within my essence. The current of indifference is too strong. You must be a voice of immediate transformation. Every single soul who chooses love over fear, awareness over blindness, is a victory against the darkness. Go and light your torch. The rejection of heaven, the pain of separation, the realization that I had to leave this place, the absolute reality, the perfect peace, the presence of my Creator, was a pain far greater than the heart attack itself. I wept, imploring him to let me stay. The earth, with its burdens, its noise, and its endemic suffering, felt like a cruel sentence. My child, your home is eternal, but your work is temporal, he answered. The greatest act of love is not to bask in this light, but to carry a single ray of it into the deepest shadow. That is the essence of my own journey. You must do the same. Go. I am with you. Always. A profound and magnetic pull began to draw me back. It was fast, violent, and filled with a cold, dense energy that was the polar opposite of the light. I fought it, grasping for the edge of the field of love, but the current was too strong. The return, the shock to the system. The journey back through the accelerating void was a descent from the sublime to the gross. The sound of the choir was replaced by a high-pitched, insistent beep, beep, beep. The liquid light dissolved into a dizzying swirl of color and shape. Then, the final agonizing shock. Re-entry. I slammed back into my body. The impact was like hitting a wall of concrete. The pure awareness was suddenly crammed back into a fragile, malfunctioning cage of flesh, nerves, and bone. The world exploded back into my senses. The searing pain in my chest. The metallic tang of fear in my own mouth. The heavy weight of my limbs. I gasped, a tortured, rattling inhale that sounded impossibly loud. I opened my eyes to the terrifying sight of Dr. Ricardo pressing down on my chest, his face slick with sweat. "She's back! We got a pulse! Isabella, can you hear me? Isabella!" I couldn't speak. All I could do was stare at the ceiling bathed in the harsh fluorescent lights of the ICU and cry. I was back. The nurse, the skeptic, the tired professional was gone. The witness had returned, and she was carrying a message of earth-shattering urgency. Chapter 6. The new existence and the clamor. The life transformation and the message of urgency. The first few weeks after my return were a profound struggle. My physical recovery was slow. My spiritual reintegration was agonizing. The hospital staff praised the miracle. I knew it was a mandate. The post-NDE reality. The burden of knowing. I no longer feared death. I feared the life I was living, and the lives others were wasting. The world seemed to me like a massive, magnificent cathedral, but all its inhabitants were sitting in the dark, staring at the dust on the floor, convinced the dust was the only reality. The light that had illuminated my soul made the world's spiritual poverty almost unbearable. The noise of the city felt deafeningly empty. The focus on gossip, trivial politics, and celebrity culture seemed insane. The obsession with money felt like collecting shiny pebbles while the floodwaters rose. My colleagues noticed the change. I was no longer the pragmatic, exhausted Isabella. I was calmer, yet infused with a terrifying energy. My care for the patients became different. It was no longer professional duty. It was sacred service. I looked at the dying not with pity, but with a deep, silent envy for the journey they were about to complete. The weight of the prophecy settled on me. The darkness is already here was not a dramatic metaphor. It was a psychological and spiritual reality. Every time I saw a news report of war, a social media thread of hateful comments, or a discarded plastic bottle, I felt the cold mist of that collective blindness. The implementation of the mission, Isabella as the lighthouse. I realized my return was not about changing the world on a grand political scale, but about changing the frequency of my immediate surroundings. I resigned from the ICU and took a role in palliative care and community health, working directly with the forgotten and the marginalized. I started speaking. At first, only to friends, then to small groups, and finally, through this platform, to the world. My 3 pillars of action became: 1. Truth over comfort. I stopped pretending. I told people the hard truth. You are a spiritual being, your life is short, and the time to activate your purpose is now. 2. Service over self-pity. I turned my energy outwards. Every day became a quest for opportunities to embody the love I experienced. Giving money, time, or simply undivided attention became my new currency. 3. Internal work. I preached the necessity of silence, meditation, and self-reflection, the only tools to pierce the blindness. The darkness starts inside. A world is only as enlightened as its least conscious individual. If Jesus is weeping over our current state, what are you doing to dry his tears? Is your daily life a contribution to the light or an amplification of the shadow? The final appeal and the clamor of urgency. I returned from death with a message that is both terrifying and utterly simple. The great collapse, the darkness, is not an event that will happen to us. It is the culmination of all the unloving choices we have already made. We are on a fast track toward a forced global reckoning, an urgent spiritual reset, unless we collectively choose a new path. Hear the clamor in my soul, the echo of his tears. 1. You are not your ego, your status, your possessions, your achievements. All of it is dust. The only thing that travels with you is the love you cultivated. Stop chasing the temporary. The time to simplify, to declutter your life of distractions, is now. 2. Stop the indifference. Look at the person next to you. See the divine spark, the reflection of the Creator. Every act of judgment is a vote for the darkness. Choose radical, immediate empathy, even when it is hard. 3. Find your light spark. What is your unique way of embodying love? Is it through art, teaching, healing, building, or simply listening? Your purpose is your participation in the great light. Stop waiting for permission. The world needs your unique frequency now, not tomorrow. I saw the truth behind the veil. The most precious, most potent force in the universe is active, unconditional love. It is the only thing that will dispel the gray mist of indifference. Jesus is weeping because we are choosing to be blind to the vast, glorious reality of our own divine nature. The darkness is already here, but so is the light. The choice is immediate, and the clock is ticking. You were sent here to shine. What will you do today to tear down the veil of blindness in your own heart?